everybody. Excited to be here for another episode of Sportsbook Confidential in the FingerLakes1.com studios. My name is John Sullivan, and this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. So as we always do when we start our show, let's get right to it and let's update our bankroll. And last week was a 2 and 3 week, so we are going to adjust our bankroll downwards. And if you see, my starting bankroll was $728, and last Friday my losing streak in the CFL continued as the Stampeders lost, and that was minus $24. And then I had the Winnipeg Jets on Friday night. They did not cover the spread, although they did win the game, but another minus $24 for me. And then on Saturday we had the Penn State over, which was pretty smooth sailing. That was plus $23. And then on Sunday morning we had the Jaguars in London, and they missed a 2-point conversion. That fell short, the on over 43, so minus 24. And then the Redskins, which was like my strongest play last week, and they were in control pretty much the whole game. So that was plus $23. And if you do the math there, you can see that my new bankroll is now 702. That's a low point for me. We started with 750. So after 9 weeks, I'm down. After 8 weeks, I should say, I'm down a few bets there. So dividing our new bankroll by 30, as we always do, adjusts our bet size. And our new bet size going forward this week is $23. So not a good week for me. I've had a lot of close games miss, not making excuses, but if you manage your bankroll correctly, it'll keep you going. You will not overbet or lose your selectiveness, as we try to do here. So let's move on to the sportsbook lesson for the day. And what I want to talk about in this episode is something called trend betting. And trends are very popular factoids. I call them factoids. I don't even know if that's a real word. I call them factoids because they're entertaining little snippets, truthful, but they're designed to entertain or entice viewers to watch a game or to entertain them while they're watching a game. And I have a few examples here. I'm going to read them. There's 3 different examples, and I'm going to talk about each one really quickly. First one says, Coach K is 5-1 in his career against Calipari. The second one says, the Bills have never beaten the Panthers. And the third one says, Alabama last 5 games have gone over, averaging 666 yards of offense in that streak. So all of those technically true, but let's look at them one by one. Coach K is 5-1 in his career against John Calipari. Well, I made these up, by the way. I don't really know if they're true or not, but statistically they could be true. The point being is, did Coach K did he coach against John Calipari when Calipari was at UMass or one of the smaller schools? Or is he 5-1 against him as a coach of Kentucky? Big difference there. And, you know, if Duke is playing Kentucky in college basketball, you know, it's the better team that's going to win the game. You know, who has the better players, who has the most experienced players, who has the better free throw shooters, these kind of things. So this little snippet would be an interesting fact, but not very useful in making a wager. Second one, the Bills have never beaten the Panthers. Well, that could be very true. However, if they're playing each other in an upcoming game, there's so many more things involved in deciding who's going to win that game. There could be different, you know, not only different players, but different arenas, different, you know, front office, management, you know, completely. It doesn't matter what they did in the past if you're betting, you know, as they say in the banking world, past performance not an indicator of future results. And then this one, Alabama in the last 5 games have gone over, averaging 666 yards of offense in that streak. That could be totally true, and Alabama could be an offensive juggernaut. But it's who they're playing next that is the big determinant over if the game is going to go over or if they're going to roll up another 666 yards of offense. And not only that, but what the bookmakers who set the lines, maybe they adjust their lines upward because Alabama keeps going over. So just because the total went over 5 games in a row for Alabama doesn't mean you just automatically bet it again. As I have here, it says new variables play a factor in upcoming games, not history. There's lots of variables. As I said, there's new management, new players, coaches, new venue, weather. You know, a team that relies on a passing attack in a bad weather game, or, you know, field issues. We talk about the pros playing in Wembley and not having a great field there. So going back, tying in a previous lesson to trend betting here is, my advice is to avoid trend betting. And the best way to do that, as we talked about a previous lesson of betting the number, not the team. And for those of you that didn't see that lesson, it's not just, if we think, Alabama's playing Team B and we like Alabama to win, but at what odds do we like Alabama to take a wager on that game? At what odds do we like the other team? Are they getting enough points that they could cover? So we're talking about betting number, not just betting the team. And if you do that, I believe that you can help avoid trend betting. And, it's hard sometimes to not fall for the narrative. I'll give you a really good example of that. And last night I bet the Raiders, who got crushed. And, I'm a firm believer that quarterbacks starting in their first NFL game, their first NFL experience as a starter, usually do not fare very well. And I was completely wrong last night. Nick Mullins was amazing. And, that is something that I need to look, I needed to look more closely at the, at all the factors in that game and not just that one factor. And I do want to say that there is historical data and current data that is very significant when making a wager. And we'll talk about that in future episodes. At some point, we'll talk about building, what's a model and building a model and trying to use numbers to be predictive in making wagers. I'm probably in the minority. I'm going off a little tangent here, but I'm in the minority that there's both quantitative and qualitative handicapping in making a wager. I try to do both and not just one or the other. And I know people that follow models and markets are more number-oriented. And I know people that are totally narrative-oriented. I try to fall somewhere in the middle. But that's today's sportsbook lesson. My advice to you is avoid trend betting, and you will probably do better than I did last night. So that being said, let's move on to all of the action this week. And we're going to start with, as we do on Friday night, with the frozen schedule in the NHL. And there's 3 games, including one this afternoon. It starts in a couple hours. The Panthers and the Jets are playing a 2-game set in Finland. They both have stars on their team that are from Finland. And this is the second game. Last night was Winnipeg was victorious, I believe, 4-2. I can't remember the score. So tonight we have, it's this afternoon, but tonight over there, Florida, versus the Jets. And we don't really know the starting goaltending at the moment. But on paper, the Jets are the better team here. They definitely have better goaltending. I may have said in the past the Panthers are really struggling in the goaltending department. Luongo went out in the first game of the year, I believe. They have Reimer and I can't remember the backup goalie's name at the moment, but it's a forgettable name. I'll put it that way. and Hellebuck for the Jets and his backup are both superior to the two Florida goaltenders. So obviously the Jets are the favorite here on neutral ice. But depending where the numbers end up, again, betting the number, not the team, the Panthers could be a better play by the time the game starts. These lines were pulled at about 9 o'clock this morning. So I do like the Jets here, but this game is definitely a pass for me. The Avalanche at the Canucks, and I think a lot of NHL bettors are sleeping on the Canucks. Obviously, the Sedins retired last year, and they had a bad year. They have this great rookie, Elias Pettersson, who I saw on opening night, and he has, I think, 7 or 8 goals already, and he would have more if he didn't get concussed in the first week of the season, and he was out for a while. Avalanche playing back-to-back. Avalanche have superior goaltending to the Canucks. The Avalanche, obviously a better team on paper. They have a better top line. They have one of the top lines in the league. This game, again, as currently lined, not really a fan. The Canucks are a live dog in this one. If the Canucks were 140, I'd be all over it. But I am going to pass on that game. And then the last game to start tonight is Carolina Hurricanes at the Arizona Coyotes. Coyotes are on a hot streak. I think they've won 4 in a row, or they're 4-1 in their last 5, and whatever. Again, not necessarily that trend is worth betting on in any way, shape, or form. But they've been playing very well. They've got Galen Chuck back. He was injured to start the year. They're starting to get their full roster back, so they're a force to be reckoned with. And I've talked about the Hurricanes that I like. They lead the top team in possession in this league. They're very skilled. I feel like they're a very confident young team, and I don't think people are going to sleep on them anymore. I think people realize that they're definitely a playoff caliber team. I do like the I do like the Hurricanes here. I feel like it's a first game of a travel, I believe, or maybe it's the second, and I feel like the Coyotes are due for a little bit of back to earth. If Darling should be in goal tonight for Carolina. And the Coyotes like to throw a lot of shots on goal. They don't always go for the best quality shots. But I feel like Carolina's up to the task here tonight. And at minus 110, that looks like, a very attractive line for me. I'm not going to mess with the spread on this game, I don't think. But we'll see where it ends up in my picks. So let's move on to the Saturday college games. And, of course, we always start off by talking about the Orange, and Syracuse travels this week to Wake Forest. And Wake Forest is a 6.5-point dog, and the total is 75.5. This is the point in the college season where I really kind of try to take a step back, because there's an issue that's not talked about earlier in the season, and that's motivation. Teams are playing for national championships. Teams are playing for bowl eligibility. And some coaches are playing for their jobs at a certain point. And Wake Forest has had a really bad year. Syracuse is ranked for the first time in a long time. They are now bowl eligible. They are, feeling really good about themselves. So the big question is, where's the motivation for Wake Forest to show up for this game? They have very little to play for. They've been humiliated by a few teams like Notre Dame at home, Clemson. I don't know. I think Syracuse can easily cover this game if they're on task. That total is really high. And, if Wake does not show up, I feel like that the under is the play here. 75, 76 points it's a lot of points. And, this game could be 51-28, and it would go over. But I don't know. If Wake isn't motivated, I could see them, scoring less than 20 points in this game. And if Syracuse is well in hand, they're not going to run up the score. So they're going to try to burn the clock. So I like the under here, but don't know if that's going to make my list. There were a lot of good matchups this week in the power conferences in college football. These are the ones I'm concentrating on. First of all, you have Georgia at Kentucky, and that's two top 10 teams. And Kentucky is an 8.5-point home dog, underdog here, and 44.5 is the total. You have a good offense in Georgia versus a good defense in Kentucky. I would lean over here, but I don't really know what to make of this game. Georgia is obviously the better team on paper, and everybody's doubted Kentucky all year long, and they always find a way to win the game. They only, they have that one loss. And the winner of this game pretty much gets to play Alabama in the conference title game. You have I don't know, if it's bad weather, I would probably take the points and forget the total. But if it's nice weather, I think like the over would be the play for that game. But game betting wise doesn't excite me very much. And then in the Big Ten, you got Penn State at Michigan. Michigan, a 10.5-point favorite at home, and 53.5 is the total here. Michigan's offense is much improved, but I don't like that total at all. 10.5 points is a lot. I feel like even if Michigan was ahead by 18, you could have a backdoor cover by Penn State here. I don't like that either way. I would lean towards taking the points with Penn State here, but the bigger the game gets, the more I question Jim Harbaugh's ability to coach up in the big games, and we'll see how he does against Ohio State down the road here. But I think I'm gonna pass on that game. It really doesn't excite me that much betting wise. And then the big game, of course, is Alabama at LSU, number 1 versus number 3. LSU getting 14.5 points, and 54 is the total here. And, of course, LSU is known for their defense and their running game, although they can score points. And Alabama is the clear-cut number 1 in the country, and nobody's really been able to touch them. And it seems like Nick Saban knows what the spread is. And he likes to put up points. So this game, 54, you got to like the over in this game, because if LSU is even going to have a chance, they're going to have to put up 28 points. And if they put up 28 points, that means Alabama's only got to put up, 24, 26. Alabama's going to put up points. Their offense is easily the best. The best in the country, so comparative to the level of competition. So I really like the over in this game. I don't know at what spread I would take LSU. Maybe 20. I would think 20 or 21 would be really enticing. But you just don't know. You just don't know. LSU has played well, and I got to say, in my opinion, they're probably one of the best 4 teams in the country. But the fact of their, the schedule they play, boy, they could end up with 2 losses and get a lousy bowl, and they're really one of the better teams. So those are the games I'm looking at this week in college. Let's move on to the pros. And, of course, my CFL losing streak is still alive. Today starts week 21 in the final week of the regular season in the CFL, and the playoffs start the following week. For those of you that don't follow the CFL, they have 6 teams make the playoffs, and then they have to the East and West playoff, and then the conference finals, and then the Grey Cup. So this week we have the playoff teams are set, but who wins the West Division and gets the bye and who plays who in the opening round is kind of still up for debate. But we've got the Stampeders at the BC Lions on Saturday. And the Lions are 6.5-point favorites, and 49.5 is the total. So Calgary kind of needs this one to just get their confidence back and sew up the division. A win here for them will guarantee them a bye and hosting the West Final. BC is playing well, but they're going to rest their starters because I believe they're playing Hamilton next week in the playoffs. And so Jonathan Jennings, the backup quarterback, who was a starter at one point, is going to play for BC. And while I don't really know what the outcome of this game is going to be, I do like the over. This game is played indoors, and Calgary was going to need a win. And I feel like 49.5 is very doable in the CFL. You can only have two touchdowns on each side, and you can still get there with the field goals and the singles. The amount of possessions are so much higher. So throw in 1 or 2 turnovers or a special teams touchdown, and that should be an easy total to hit. So that's going to be on my list of plays. So let's move on to the NFL, and I'm going to start with Buffalo, and they are hosting the Chicago Bears. Doesn't get easier for Buffalo. Derek Anderson was signed off the street. He got concussed at the end of the Monday night game. Nathan Peterman's back in the fold. The Bills signed Matt Barkley off the street this week. Bills getting 10. They have a good defense. So do the Bears. The total stands out for me, 37.5. It shouldn't be really bad weather in Buffalo. It should rain. When I see a total that low, I immediately want to take the over. Peterman is probably bad for the spread, but he's actually probably really good for the total because he throws touchdowns and pick sixes. So I don't know if I can stand to watch this game, but I do like the over here. I feel like the Bears have too many weapons for the Bills. And, the Bills are just going to have to pass the ball at some point. Any team that is playing Buffalo is going to stuff the run and force them to throw the ball because they don't have a quarterback and they're very lean at wide receiver. It's really simple. So you think that, with the Colts, I thought that game would go over. Of course, the total was a little higher there, but, you would hope that the Bills could put up more than 5 points. We'll see. They got 9 against New England. So moving on to the Jets, they're going to visit divisional rival Miami, and it continues, even though it's November, it continues to be Brocktober in Miami as Brock Osweiler will start again, and they are 3-point favorites. I got to tell you, the Jets are banged up. Miami's running back tandem of Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake is really been producing over the last month. And if their best playmaking receivers are good to go this Sunday, you got to like the Dolphins at -3. The total, I don't know. This could be a 28-10 game. It could be one of those classic Jets-Dolphins shootouts, but I doubt it. I kind of lean under on the total here, but I do like the Dolphins -3. We'll see where this line goes over the weekend. And then moving on to the Chargers at the Seahawks. And this game really stood out for me. Seahawks currently a 1-point favorite at home. Seattle's a very tough place to go and play. The total's 48. And the Seahawks just proved last week that they can shut down a passing attack. They were having trouble with their defense. I think they finally kind of got it together. But they really stymied the Lions, who had to throw the ball. And the Chargers are in the same boat. They do have Melvin Gordon, but they cannot rely on the run to win this game. They're going to have to throw the ball. So with the Chargers' defense being as weak as it's been all year, I do like Seattle to score points here. Russ Wilson will not have to throw the ball as much. Their running game has really been improving week to week. I don't know about the total. I lean under on the total, but I really like the Seahawks -1. And that's going to make my list of plays this week. And then in the later games on Sunday, we have the Rams at the Saints. Saints are 1-point dogs, a total 60. And another marquee matchup here. You think indoors it's going to be, fireworks. And that's what they thought about last week with the Packers and the Rams. And, I'm a sucker for these high totals. I like to go under on the high totals. And, I really like that, under 60. Both of these defenses are above average. The Saints defense has really shown itself the last couple of weeks. One red zone turnover, no special teams touchdowns, and this under is very doable. You have to like the Rams as a favorite here. But Drew Brees is having an MVP season, and it should be a great game to watch. And then the Packers at the Patriots. We've got another primetime game. Aaron Rodgers, if he's still breathing, he keeps his team in the game as he did last week. The Patriots at home are covering machines. This total is probably about right. I really don't want to touch the total here. But if it gets to 6 or 7, I really like the Packers to cover this game. You feel like they really need a win, and you feel like that the Patriots could be a little overconfident here. So, we'll see where it goes, but I really, really like the Packers here. So now, instead of doing fantasy picks this week, I wanted to do the Week in Gambling Twitter, and I got a couple of things to show you. And let's start with David Purdom from ESPN. And for those of you that don't follow gambling news like I do, I wanted to show this to you. The end of every month, the Nevada Gaming Board releases how the books, they don't break it down by which casinos, but how the casinos did in their gaming revenues. And these are net profits. As you can see, you've got blackjack, a $92 million profit, craps $32.7 million, roulette $40 million, baccarat $70 million. Wow. Sports $56.3 million. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because sports betting is really more of an afterthought in Vegas. They do it as a service to get their whales and their good customers to the tables, because that's where they make their money. And of course, you have the penny slots, $281.7 million. They're called one-armed bandits for a reason, aren't they, folks? So you could see these numbers every month, and there's almost always a profit in the sports. Every once in a blue moon, the Vegas casinos will have a losing month in sports betting, but they are winners almost all of the time. And then in other gambling news, important, this one applies to New York. Tom Precious, who writes for the Buffalo News, state judge in New York declares daily fantasy sports contests to be gambling. I think he meant not games of skill. It says not games of contest. Cornelius Murray, lawyer who brought the DFS case, says state should immediately shut down the contest in New York, awaiting word from the New York Attorney General. Of course, this broke right before the elections. I really don't expect anybody to say anything about it in the next couple of weeks. But yes, there were people that challenged the DFS law that was written in 2015 in New York State, saying that it's gambling and not a game of skill, and that therefore making the DFS law unconstitutional. What I think is going to happen here, without going into a long dissertation, is that this is impetus for the next legislature to get both a gambling law and a DFS law encompassed in a gaming bill that's going to make all of these cases moot at some point. So I think things are going to go on as usual for a little while, and then by next June, I'm hoping that there will be enough forthright movement in the legislature to get a gaming bill done, and then we'll hopefully have gaming here in the Finger Lakes. And then finally, our friend Jeff Schwartz at, if I can find the mouse, here we go. Jeff Schwartz at the Action Network. To end things on a lighter note, he says, for those of you that are like the tout stuff, he says, my financial planner is the Action Network. Fingers crossed. And all I can say is, I wish you luck, buddy. Not a whole lot going to happen there. So let's wrap it up with my picks. And we've got, I'm going to take the Hurricanes money line minus 110 tonight. I really like them to take one from the Coyotes there. And Saturday, Calgary and British Columbia Lions over 49.5. Also Saturday, Alabama and LSU over 54. Let's see a lot of points, a lot of big plays there. On Sunday, we got Seahawks minus 1. And Sunday afternoon, the Rams and the Saints under 60. Crossing my fingers again. So that's it for this week. I'm going to play the outro music, and hopefully we'll get some winners here. So thanks for watching. Take care.